Welcome to the Vatican! Have you ever wondered how a whole country can fit inside a single city? It sounds like something from a storybook, doesn't it? But right in the heart of Rome, Italy, you'll find exactly that. This is Vatican City, the smallest independent country in the world. It's a place of immense history, stunning art, and profound spiritual significance. Many people visit Rome and walk right into another country without even needing a passport. It's a fascinating quirk of geography and history, a political anomaly that has survived for nearly a century. This tiny nation is proof that size has nothing to do with influence, and its story is one of power, faith, and a very clever political solution. Imagine a place where the head of state is also the leader of a global religion. That's the Pope in Vatican City. This isn't just a collection of beautiful buildings, it's a fully functioning sovereign state. It has its own flag, its own anthem, and its own postal service that's famous among stamp collectors. It even mints its own euros with the Pope's face on them. When you stand in St. Peter's Square, you're not technically in Italy anymore. You've crossed an invisible open border into a nation governed by ancient traditions and modern necessities. So where exactly is this tiny country? If you're visiting Rome, you're already there. Vatican City is a walled enclave nestled entirely within the city limits of Rome, Italy. It's located on the west bank of the Tiber River, a stone's throw from some of Rome's most famous ancient sites. There are no passport controls, no border guards checking your papers, and no giant signs announcing your arrival. You can simply walk from a busy Roman street across an imaginary line and find yourself in another country. The most common entry point is the magnificent St. Peter's Square, which acts as a grand, welcoming courtyard for the state. Visually, the Vatican is dominated by breathtaking architecture. The centerpiece is the awe-inspiring St. Peter's Basilica with its magnificent dome designed by Michelangelo. This dome is a landmark you can see from many parts of Rome, acting as a constant reminder of the Vatican's presence. The country is surrounded by imposing stone walls, which were originally built to protect the Pope. Within these walls, you'll find lush gardens, ornate palaces, and the world-famous Vatican museums. It's a place where every corner seems to hold a masterpiece, from priceless sculptures to stunning frescoes. It feels less like a country and more like a massive open-air museum. The story of the Vatican begins long before it was a country. In ancient times, the area where it now stands was known as Ager Vaticanus. This was a marshy, undesirable piece of land on the outskirts of Rome. It was the site of a circus built by the Emperor Caligula, a place for chariot races and public spectacles. It was here, according to tradition, that St. Peter, one of Jesus' apostles and the first pope, was martyred around 64 AD. He was crucified upside down and buried in a simple grave on Vatican Hill. This event transformed the area from a place of entertainment into sacred ground for the growing Christian community. Over the centuries, as Christianity grew from a persecuted sect to the official religion of the Roman Empire, the tomb of St. Peter became a major pilgrimage site. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine, the first Christian emperor, ordered the construction of a grand basilica directly over the apostles' tomb. This original St. Peter's Basilica stood for over 1,000 years. The presence of this holy site gave the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, enormous prestige and authority. As the Western Roman Empire crumbled, the Pope stepped into the power vacuum, becoming not just spiritual leaders but also influential political figures in Rome and beyond. This growing power eventually led to the creation of the Papal States. Starting in the 8th century, the popes began to govern a large territory that stretched across the Italian peninsula. For over 1,000 years, the pope was a temporal ruler, a king with his own armies, lands, and subjects. The 19th century was a time of great change in Europe. The spirit of nationalism was sweeping the continent, and the Italian peninsula was no exception. For centuries, Italy had been a patchwork of small kingdoms, duchies, and of course, the Papal States. A powerful movement known as the Risorgimento, or Resurgence, fought to unite all of these territories into a single, independent country. Led by charismatic figures like Giuseppe Garibaldi and King Victor Emmanuel II, the Kingdom of Italy was proclaimed in 1861. One by one, the different states joined the new nation, but one major piece of the puzzle was still missing: Rome. Rome was still the capital of the much-reduced Papal States and was protected by French troops. For the Italian nationalists, Italy without Rome was incomplete. Rome was the historical and cultural heart of the peninsula, and they were determined to make it their capital. In 1870, the Franco-Prussian War forced France to withdraw its soldiers from Rome to fight elsewhere. Seizing the opportunity, the Italian army marched on the city. After a brief battle, they breached the ancient Aurelian walls and captured Rome. The thousand-year reign of the popes as temporal rulers came to an abrupt and dramatic end. Pope Pius IX was furious. He refused to recognize the legitimacy of the new Kingdom of Italy and rejected its authority over Rome. He declared himself a prisoner in the Vatican and retreated inside the Apostolic Palace, refusing to ever set foot in the city of Rome again. This created a tense and awkward standoff that became known as the Roman Question. For nearly 60 years, the popes lived in self-imposed confinement within the Vatican walls. They excommunicated the Italian king and forbade Catholics from participating in Italian politics. Italy had its capital, but it was in a state of cold war with the leader of the Catholic world who lived right in its center. The Roman Question simmered for decades. 4 successive popes remained prisoners in the Vatican, a silent protest against the loss of their temporal power. The stalemate seemed unbreakable. However, by the 1920s, both sides were ready for a solution. The Italian government was now led by the fascist dictator Benito Mussolini. Mussolini, despite his anti-clerical rhetoric, was a pragmatist. He understood that making peace with the Catholic Church would bring him immense prestige and help solidify his rule over the deeply religious Italian population. On the other side, Pope Pius XI was also eager to find a resolution. He recognized that the old papal states were gone for good, and he had no desire to govern a large kingdom. What he needed was a guarantee of the Pope's independence and sovereignty. The Church's mission was global and spiritual, and being subject to any single nation's government was, well, unacceptable. He needed a small piece of territory, a sovereign state, to ensure that the Holy See could operate freely on the international stage without interference. The goal was no longer about reclaiming vast lands, but about securing a small, independent foothold. After long and secret negotiations, the two sides reached an agreement. On February 11, 1929, they signed the Lateran Pacts. This historic treaty, signed at the Lateran Palace in Rome, finally solved the Roman question. The agreement had 3 main parts. First, it recognized Vatican City as a fully independent and sovereign state, with the Pope as its head. Italy acknowledged the Pope's absolute authority within this tiny territory. Second, it included a financial settlement where Italy compensated the Holy See for the loss of the Papal States. This gave the new state the financial resources it needed to function. The third and most crucial part was the Concordat, which defined the relationship between the Church and the Italian state. It made Catholicism the state religion of Italy and gave the Church significant influence in areas like education and marriage. In return, the Holy See officially recognized the Kingdom of Italy, with Rome as its capital. The Pope was no longer a prisoner. The treaty was a masterpiece of diplomacy. The Church got the independence it craved, and Mussolini got the endorsement of the Church. The Vatican City state was born, and the modern era of the papacy had begun. A purposeful design, yeah, that's really the heart of it. The creation of Vatican City in 1929 established the smallest country in the world, covering just 110 acres or 44 hectares. This tiny size was not an accident or a historical leftover. It was a deliberate and honestly brilliant choice. Pope Pius XI, who oversaw the negotiations, made it very clear that he had no interest in ruling over a large population or territory. The era of the Papal States with its armies and political maneuvering was over. The Church's mission in the 20th century was spiritual, not political. A large country would have been a distraction from that mission, pulling the Pope back into local politics. The Pope needed just enough land to guarantee his sovereignty. The principle was simple: to be truly independent, the Pope could not be a citizen or subject of any other country. By having his own state, however small, he became a fellow sovereign, a head of state equal to any king, president, or prime minister. The Lateran Treaty referred to this as creating a state with the minimum territory necessary for the exercise of its spiritual power. It was a symbolic territory, just large enough to house the Pope, the central administration of the Church, known as the Roman Curia, St. Peter's Basilica, and the Vatican Museums. This tiny size provided a perfect solution. It gave the papacy the international legal standing of a sovereign state without burdening it with the complex responsibilities of governing a large civilian population. Vatican City has no agriculture, no industry, and very few permanent residents. Its purpose is singular, to serve as the physical headquarters of the Holy See. This allows the Church to focus its energy and resources on its global flock of over 1 billion Catholics. The small size is a physical expression of the Church's modern identity. Its power is not in land, but in faith and influence. It's hard to wrap your head around just how small Vatican City really is. At 110 acres, it is by far the smallest independent state on Earth. To give you some perspective, the next smallest country, Monaco, is nearly 5 times larger. The entire country of Vatican City could fit inside New York City's Central Park about 8 times over. If you've ever been to the National Mall in Washington, D.C., which stretches from the Capitol building to the Lincoln Memorial, you've walked a distance much greater than the width of the Vatican. It's a country you can literally walk across in about 15 minutes. Let's try another comparison. Think of a large shopping mall or a major university campus. Many of these are larger than Vatican City. Disneyland Park in California, for example, is around 85 acres, making it only slightly smaller than the entire country. The Mall of America in Minnesota is significantly larger. Imagine an entire nation with its own government, laws, and international relations occupying less space than a place where you go to shop or ride roller coasters. This really highlights the unique nature of the Vatican. Its importance is completely disconnected from its physical size. The population is just as small. Vatican City has only about 800 residents, and fewer than 500 of them have Vatican citizenship. This citizenship is not based on birth, but is granted to those who work for the Holy See, primarily cardinals, diplomats, and members of the Swiss Guard. When their service ends, their citizenship is usually revoked. This makes it one of the most exclusive citizenships in the world. The workforce is much larger, with several thousand people commuting into the Vatican from Rome every day to work in its offices, museums, and maintenance departments. This miniature scale is what makes the Vatican so remarkable. It functions as a sovereign entity on the world stage, sending and receiving ambassadors and entering into international treaties, all from a territory smaller than many city parks. It demonstrates that, in the modern world, a nation's power and influence are not necessarily tied to its landmass or population. In the end, Vatican City is a paradox that works. It is a country with almost no citizens, a state with no industry, and a monarchy whose ruler is elected. It is an absolute anomaly in the modern world, born from a history of immense power, dramatic loss, and brilliant diplomacy. The solution born from the Roman question in 1929 was not just a political fix, it was a redefinition of papal power for the modern age. By trading a kingdom for a tiny sovereign enclave, the papacy freed itself from the messy business of local politics and repositioned itself as a global spiritual authority. The story of the Vatican is a powerful lesson in how influence is not measured in square miles. Its tiny territory provides the legal and political independence necessary for the Pope to lead a global faith community without compromise. When you stand in the middle of St. Peter's Square, you are standing at the intersection of faith, history, art, and politics. You are in a place that is simultaneously a destination for tourists, a sacred site for pilgrims, and the command center for a worldwide institution. It is a city within a city, a state within a state, and a spiritual heart for millions. Today, as the world faces complex challenges, the Vatican continues to play its unique role. The Pope uses his platform to speak on issues ranging from poverty and migration to climate change and international peace. His voice carries weight not because of armies or economic might, but because of the moral authority vested in his office and the global reach of the institution he leads. The tiny state of Vatican City is the stage from which this influence is projected, a neutral ground from which the Pope can engage with the entire world. It proves that sometimes the smallest places can have the biggest impact. So, the next time you see a picture of the Pope or hear about a declaration from the Vatican, remember the incredible story behind this tiny nation. It's a story of survival and adaptation, a testament to the enduring power of faith in a changing world. Vatican City is not just a curious footnote in geography, it is a living, breathing testament to the idea that true sovereignty comes not from land, but from purpose. And its purpose resonates far beyond its ancient walls, touching lives in every corner of the globe.